What's up, YouTube? KS Gun Guy here. Thanks for joining me today, as always. So, if you've been paying attention, you've probably realized that I've been featuring a fair amount of Sig Sauer firearms lately. Well, you're absolutely correct. That is for a couple of reasons. First, I've been having a lot of fun with the X series of P229 firearms, but I'm also a big fan of Sig Sauer. I think by and large they do a pretty good job. Now, last year I featured a P229 Enhanced Elite Blue Titanium, and I had a lot of fun with that firearm, and at the time the price was really right for it. It was coming in right around $700 or so. That price for that firearm has gone up a little bit, and from what I understand, they're a little bit harder to find now. I'm not sure if they're still doing them or not. Be sure to leave a comment down below if you can still find those out there. But a lot of people were asking about a comparison with the Legion series. So I had a Legion years ago when it first came out, and I had a great time with it. Now, that was one of those guns that got away just simply to bring in other guns. I mean, we do that a lot as gun people, but I had the opportunity to walk back into the Legion at a reasonably decent price, and we'll talk about value or price here in just a little bit, and I had to jump on that opportunity, so that brings us to today with the P229 Legion. So let's go ahead and knock a couple of specs of this guy out of the way. The length is 7.4 inches. The height is 5.4 inches. The barrel length is 3.9 inches. The width is 1.5 inches. Give you a good look at that, of course. The weight unloaded is 34.4 ounces. Now, from a magazine capacity, it is 15 rounds. It does come with 3 steel magazines, and they're good quality magazines. Unfortunately, they're pretty pricey. I mean, you can find them somewhere between $40 and $60, depending on where you look. That's a pretty good price range. So share down in the comments if you can find some really good deals on those. Now, from a slide and frame standpoint, the slide is stainless steel and the frame is an alloy frame, now both of which are covered with a PVD coating colored in gray. They call this a Legion gray, so it's a little bit exclusive to the Legion series, and I have to say, I think it's a really cool looking firearm. Now, I had a good time with that blue titanium, but there is something about this Legion gun that just looks kind of cool, kind of, well, tactical, if you will, although we'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a little bit. Now, from an action standpoint, this is the double action, single action version. There is a single action version as well. I prefer the double action, single action. I prefer that, and it's a little bit more classic, I think, from a manual of arms standpoint. Again, we'll talk about that here in just a moment. So from a feature standpoint, we're going to kind of start from the bottom and work our way up. There are a lot of features to talk about. The very first one are the grips. Now we'll talk about the actual grips themselves, but in terms of the grips, they actually come down a little bit further than the rest of the frame, and they give you a tiny bit of a magwell, not entirely too much. There's a lot of light in here, but it's always hard to capture magwells on film. It does help with the insertion of magazines, but again, it's pretty slight, and the actual frame itself doesn't really have much of a magwell because that frame material is actually pretty thin. Now, from a grip standpoint, this does come with exclusive G10 grips that are made specifically for the Legion. I'll give you a good look at those, of course. They do have the Legion insignia in the middle of them, and they're a tiny bit thinner than some of the other, at least P229 and 226 grips out there, and I find these to be probably the most comfortable of all of the different grip types, like the E2s and that sort of thing. Now, this checkering does go all the way around. I would classify this checkering as probably a medium aggressive or just barely more than a medium aggressive. So it's really nice. The gun stays planted in your hand, however, not so much that it's going to beat you up. Now, it does also have some pretty nice texturing in the front strap as well. And from what I understand, it's a little bit enhanced for the Legion series. Certainly correct me in the comments if that is not the case, but I do understand that to be true. Now, they also did a little bit of checkering under the trigger guard as well and in front, so a little bit more enhancement there as well. You'll also notice that they actually have the X series undercut right here under the trigger guard, so it just allows your hand to get just a little bit further up, and it's incredibly comfortable. I like the fact that they have that undercut, whereas some of the other P-Series guns do not have that. Now, it does still have a beaver tail, although this is a shortened beaver tail, and from what I understand, it's actually been hiked up a tiny bit. At least that's what Sig Sauer says. I don't know how true that necessarily is, but it's extremely comfortable, and it's short because some people say that this gun is intended to be carried, and it certainly can. P229s have been carried for quite some time. Being a Legion series, I don't think I would carry it personally. I think it's more of a collection gun. However, other people obviously run their guns a little bit differently. No problem with that whatsoever. And then it does have an accessory rail for your lights, lasers, grenade launchers, as you would expect, of course. Now, from a manual of arms standpoint or from a controls standpoint, here's where things get just a little bit different. Now, they do have a low-profile slide stop, and I will say more of a slide stop than release. I mean, it can be used as a release. It's certainly functional that way. However, because it's so low profile, it's actually pretty hard to get to. I mean, you really have to kind of dig your thumb in, or at least I do, to really be able to get it. Now, that slide stop or slide release, whatever you want to say, is not ambidextrous, unfortunately, so it's just on the left side for right-handed folks out there. The same with the decocker. Now, that's exactly what this little lever right here is. It just kind of goes up and down, and when you press it down enough, it does decock the hammer there. And again, I like that system. It's more, I think, the classic Sig P series system. So again, that's why I chose that double action, single action manual of arms, and once again, not ambidextrous for that. Now, from a magazine release standpoint, I like this magazine release. Now, I would have liked them to have scalloped the grips just a little bit more, although it's pretty thin right there. They may not have been able to, but I've noticed that from a magazine release standpoint, definitely doable. But if you have shorter thumbs, you might have a little bit more of a chore getting to this, because again, it really does sit pretty flush with those grips. That's a minor gripe, not a big deal. Now, from an ambidextrous standpoint, it is not ambidextrous out of the box. However, you can switch it. I've actually watched a couple of videos doing it, and it's certainly doable. However, it's probably a little bit tedious, and one thing I would say, there's some springs internally in there that you want to make sure that you're very careful of if you're going to do that. But again, just go to YouTube and search for magazine swapping for the P series, and you'll find some. They are definitely out there, and it is doable. From a takedown standpoint, and you guys know that lately I have not really been doing a whole lot of takedowns here, but several people have asked me to start doing that again. I will from time to time. I will in this case. So we do have a takedown lever. It's pretty standard for Sig Sauer with a lot of their different models. And then all you have to do is take the slide off. Notice I did not have to pull the trigger. Now, I'm not going to pull everything apart in here. It's pretty standard fare. You've got your slide, your guide rod, and spring assembly. That guide rod is stainless steel, which is nice. If you're wondering, adds a little bit of weight out in front. And then your barrel, and then of course your frame. So it's pretty standard fare for your P series firearms. Everything is very clean. It's very easy to maintain. No big deal. But that's really it. Not terribly special there. And then to reassemble, just slide your slide back. And again, always tough to do on camera. Just lock it back, flip your lever up, and you are good to go. No big deal there. So that's it from a frame standpoint. Now from a slide standpoint, first thing, we do have rear and front serrations, both of which are definitely usable, and they blend in very nicely with the slide as well. So they're not terribly outlandish or anything like that. We do have a small Sig Sauer and P229 logo. Give you a little bit of a look at that. Kind of cool. Speaking of logos, one other thing that's a little bit different for this, of course, it does have the Legion insignia. It's more a marketing thing than anything else, unless it's something that's just really meaningful to you. It is kind of cool. It separates this from some of the other offerings for the P229 series. One of my favorite features of this firearm, as well as the P320X carry, is going to be your X-ray sights right there, and I'll give you a look at that sight lineup. I really like this sight picture a lot. First, it's got night sights all the way around, as you would expect, but then it does have your X-ray front sight, so it's going to be a high-vis style front sight, and it's green, and it really pops out, especially in daylight or on the range, what have you. Really does a good job, and I've always liked Sig Sauer night sights. I think they do a great job, so I really feel like this firearm is definitely feature loaded. So from a price standpoint, I did mention I would talk about price. Now the Legion is going to come in somewhere between $1,100 and $1,300 depending on where you look. So it's a pricey firearm for sure, and that's why I say that it's a little bit more of a collection firearm, at least in my eyes. Of course, your mileage may vary there. Some people definitely do carry these firearms. I have found that the finish, the PVD finish on this, can actually scratch relatively easily. So it's something to consider. Depends on how much you want to bang up your gun. More power to you if you do. Again, for me, I would prefer to leave this in as good a condition as I possibly can, just from a collection standpoint. So when we come back, of course, we're going to take a look at the trigger and some of the differences between it and some of the other offerings with the P series out there, and then we'll wrap things up. But first, let's take a look at some of that shooting. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that footage at the range. So admittedly, I haven't captured a lot of shooting footage with this, although I did take the camera with me for my first outing. However, I've been working a little bit on technique and trying to get out of some bad habits that I've developed because I've been doing the YouTube thing and taking the cameras with me all the time and focusing more on those than on the shooting itself. So it was an excuse to take this gun and just do some fun shooting, however, also work on a little bit of fundamentals. So I've tried to capture a little bit to show on this video, but some of it was off camera, just kind of me shooting. I'm going to be doing that a little bit more often, I admit. Largely because, again, I'm trying to break myself of a couple of bad habits. I may do a video on that down the road. But from a shooting perspective, the P229 Legion is absolutely fantastic, and I attribute that to several things. Of course, the overall ergonomics with these G10 grips and the checkering on the front strap, as well as the sights. I mean, it just is a lot of fun to shoot. So let's go ahead and take a look at the trigger, and there are a couple of really nice things about this specific trigger for the Legion series. First, it is a short reset trigger. We're going to look at that here in a moment, but also it's a Gray Guns trigger as well. So it's an enhanced trigger all the way around. Now, Gray Guns does have a flat trigger as well. I may look into that at some point in time. They're not very expensive, and from what I understand, they're relatively easy to install. In fact, P-Series firearms are actually not entirely too difficult to work on as long as you've got some good videos to follow and the right tools to do so. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Of course, I do have some dummy rounds in here. You guys know I do not like to drop the hammer on an empty gun or dry fire hammer guns. That's just me, and I've seen the negative effects of that firsthand. So I don't do that. But again, from a double action standpoint, I measure this at right around 9 pounds or so. So that's really not too bad for double action, and it's really very clean. So let's go ahead and take a look at that here for just a moment. So we get a wall very quickly, of course, and then there's a pretty good amount of force heading back at me. But then you just pull right through, and it just, you know, it's smooth. It's heavy, but it is very smooth for sure. So go ahead and pop that guy out of there, and we'll take a look at this reset. And here's where things are really cool. There's your reset right there. It's incredibly short. That's that short reset trigger, and I think the Legion trigger is just a step above that as well. So it's incredibly short, very crisp, and this gun just kind of screams to want to go fast, I'll admit, and then we get back out to the front. So we'll go ahead and do that double action pull again at 9 pounds, and it just pulls right through. We'll get rid of that, and then our reset again. Right there. Incredibly short, very crisp. It's a lot of fun. Now, from a single action standpoint, now that our hammer is back, the single action is coming in somewhere between 3.5 and 4 pounds. So it's a really nice trigger. It's not too light, but it is certainly very, very clean. So we've got a little bit of uptake right there, and we hit a defined wall and then a break. And I mean, it's pretty effortless. And then we get back to that reset again. I love this reset, I will say. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. So one more time with that single action, just a little bit of uptake there, and then a pull, very smooth, very light, and then our reset right there, and we're back out to the start. So just a fantastic trigger. I think as far as the P series firearms go, I think the Legion trigger is bar none my favorite. I don't want to say the best, of course, but certainly my favorite out of the lot. So it's been a lot of fun to get back into the Legion and just have some fun with it. I'm going to be doing some comparisons with other firearms, specifically the X-Carry. A lot of people have been asking for a comparison with that, so I definitely want to do that. Always a fun time to do an If I Can Only Have One, so look for that coming soon. So I want to hear from you guys, hear what you guys have to say about P229, specifically the Legion, but any other experiences you've had as well. I always love to hear your stories and have a conversation with you guys. So thanks so much for watching as always, and I will see you next time.